There are many theories about what happened to Jimmy Hoffa, but none of them have ever led to the discovery of his body. In 1975, the chairman of the powerful Teamsters Union disappeared and was never seen again. Despite countless investigations, no trace of him has ever been found. And after all these years, we still don't know what happened to him. This is the most perplexing missing persons case in American history, and it is kept alive by rumors and speculation that he's being held prisoner in a mysterious room where no one stays alive. Is this really true? What happened to Jimmy Hoffa, and where is he being kept? Let's take a look at the strange facts surrounding the case and see if we can find any answers. Before we get into the main story, make sure to hit that like button for more great videos. Join our channel and subscribe so that you never miss an upload. Also, stick around until the end to hear about the most terrifying part of the Hoffa disappearance. It's something that will make your blood run cold. James Riddle. Hoffa was born on February 14th, 1913. His father owned a small grocery store in Brazil, Indiana. But when Jimmy was just 2 years old, his family moved to a poor section of Detroit known as Greektown. Jimmy grew up in a 2-bedroom house with his parents and 5 siblings. Even though they didn't have much money, life was good in the Hoffa household, and the only thing Jimmy had ever known was the love of his family. But when Jimmy was just 9 years old, everything changed. His father was arrested on bank robbery charges and sentenced to 18 years in federal prison. This was devastating news for Jimmy, and his mother, who had always been a strong, independent woman, was forced to become the sole provider for the family. From that moment on, she dedicated her life to raising her children and making sure they grew up with good values. She was determined that they would never follow in their father's criminal footsteps. Jimmy certainly listened to his mother. He was a bright young man who excelled at school. He finished high school at just 16 and then attended the University of Detroit. After earning a bachelor's degree, he went to law school at night while working as a legal clerk during the day. All the while, he helped support his family financially by selling insurance. He wanted to be a lawyer more than anything else in the world. But after he graduated from law school, he couldn't find a job. So instead, he went back to selling insurance. Ironically, he became a leading figure in the Teamsters Union and was elected vice president in 1952. 2 years later, he was elected president. The Teamsters Union represented over 1 million truck drivers, warehouse workers, and other laborers across the United States. As a labor leader, Hoffa became one of the most powerful men in America. He successfully negotiated higher wages and better benefits for union members, but he also became notorious for his involvement in organized crime. As some people say, he brought a whole new meaning to the phrase, "You scratch my back, and I'll scratch yours." Throughout his career as a labor leader, Hoffa had close ties to the mafia. He worked hand in hand with mob bosses to ensure smooth negotiations and profitable union deals. But as his power grew, so did the scrutiny from the government. In 1957, he was indicted on perjury charges for lying to a federal grand jury about his relationship with the mafia. The charges were eventually dropped due to a hung jury, but this was just the beginning of his legal troubles. A few years later, Hoffa was indicted again, this time on racketeering and bribery charges. Again, the case was dismissed before it went to trial. Then in 1964, he was finally convicted on both counts. This time, however, there was no escaping justice. Hoffa was sentenced to 13 years in prison. When he was released in 1971, He quickly got to work rebuilding his reputation, but it wasn't easy. He had made powerful enemies in the government who were eager to keep him behind bars, so they began to fabricate new charges against him. It didn't take long for them to come up with a solid case. Once more, Hoff was charged with bribery and racketeering. This time, he was also charged with mail and wire fraud. The government was determined to put Hoff back in jail where they felt he belonged. They weren't going to let him get away with his crimes so easily. In 1975, the case against Hoffa finally went to trial. He was found guilty and sentenced to 5 years in prison. Hoffa immediately reported to the federal prison in Marion, Illinois. But after serving just 6 months of his sentence, President Carter commuted it, and Hoffa was set free. Everyone assumed he would lay low and stay out of the public eye, but he wasted no time in getting back to work. Hoffa began meeting with union officials and business leaders. He even met with President Carter to discuss the possibility of reinstating his pension. But not everyone was happy to see Hoffa back in the spotlight. There were those who wanted to make sure he did not return to his old ways and cause trouble once again. One of these people was a mafia hitman named Anthony Giacalone. He had been a member of the Detroit Mafia family for nearly 30 years, and he knew things about Hoffa that nobody else did. Giacalone had been assigned to kill Hoffa years ago, but he never carried out the hit. Instead, he became Hoffa's bodyguard. Now, after all these years, it seemed like Giacomo was ready to collect his reward. On July 30th, 1975, Hoffa was scheduled to meet with 2 old friends, Frank Sheeran and Anthony J. Giacomo. The 3 men had worked together for years, and they were close personal friends. But this time, Giacomo had something else in mind. He wanted to kill Hoffa and collect the reward that had been placed on his head. As soon as Hoffa arrived at the restaurant, Giacomo pulled out a gun and shot him several times. Hoffa's body was never recovered, and his whereabouts remain a mystery to this day. Some people believe that Giacomo hid his body in concrete at the Jersey Shore. Others believe he buried it under a bridge in western Pennsylvania. Still, others believe he fed Hoffa's body to alligators at the zoo in Philadelphia. But these are just theories. We don't know what really happened to Jimmy Hoffa's body. Now, here's the most horrifying part of the story. According to Anthony Giacomo's son, his father didn't act alone. He had help from another mafia hitman named Anthony Tony Bro Provenzano. Together, they kidnapped Hoffa, drove him to an isolated area, and shot him dead. Then, they cut his body into pieces and disposed of it in an acid bath. You may be wondering why Hoffa's body was never recovered. Well, it's because those responsible for his death took extreme measures to make sure it was never found. They wanted to send a message to other people in the mafia that if they crossed them, they would be next. Hoffa's death was a warning to other mobsters. There are many unanswered questions surrounding the disappearance of Jimmy Hoffa. Did he ever have a chance to escape his kidnappers? Was he tortured before he died? And why did the mafia want him dead? We may never know the answers to these questions, but we do know that Anthony Giacalone and Anthony Provenzano were responsible for his death. They were both killed in the early 1980s, but not before they had done a lot of damage. The 2 men had been involved in a number of illegal activities, and they had made a lot of enemies. But their crimes would eventually catch up with them, and they would both be sentenced to life in prison. However, they were never able to serve their full sentences. Both men were found dead in their cells under mysterious circumstances. Some people believe they were killed by rival mobsters, but we may never know the truth. What do you think happened to Jimmy Hoffa? Was he killed by the mafia? Or was there another explanation for his disappearance? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe so that you never miss an upload.